My son-in-law tried to turn my granddaughter against me on the night before Christmas. He leaned down to her as she unwrapped the last present and murmured, almost sweetly, "You know, Evelyn, your grandfather's a tight-fisted old man. He only spent $250 on that gift." He said it with a smile, so polished it could have belonged to a politician. But my granddaughter, blessed that girl, smiled even wider and replied, "And a $6 million education trust, Daddy." I didn't understand what she'd said until the wine glass hit the carpet. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. It toppled from my son-in-law's hand in slow motion, landing with a soft thud before dark red wine spread in a perfect halo around his shoes. He stared at Evelyn as though she'd announced she'd inherited a kingdom. His face drained of color in mere seconds, shifting from warm holiday cheer to ghostly panic. Across the room, my daughter Jonas dropped the stack of sweaters she'd been folding, one of them a sweater I'd given her last year, still with the tag on, though I pretended not to notice. She rushed across the living room in 3 long strides. "Miles, honey, what's wrong? Are you lightheaded? Did something happen?" But Miles wasn't looking at her. His eyes stayed locked on my granddaughter, who now seemed caught between pride and confusion. I recognized that look 16-year-olds know when they've stepped on a social landmine, but not yet why it exploded. "The $6 million, what?" Miles rasped. "The trust fund," I answered slowly. "You remember, I set it up when she was 2. She was allowed to talk about it after turning 16. She turned 16 in November. I'd written that rule years ago, thinking 16 was a distant, abstract age in adulthood tucked in the far future. Now here it was, standing in my living room, accidentally detonating the truth. Miles grabbed the arm of the sofa as his knees buckled, and then he collapsed, literally collapsed. His body dropped into the cushions like a sack of overpriced organic potatoes someone forgot in the back seat of a car. Jonas fumbled for her phone. "Dad, I think he's having a heart attack. Oh my God, Dash." Her hands shook so badly the phone slipped through her fingers twice before she finally unlocked it. I should have been alarmed. Instead, I found myself wondering why Miles cared so much about a trust fund that had never belonged to him. 3 paramedics arrived while a holiday classic hummed from the speaker in the corner. Dash. Oh come, Emmanuel." Though in that moment the phrase "captive Israel" felt more appropriate for my son-in-law than the original meaning of the song. They checked his vitals while he argued weakly that he was just startled. "Just give me a moment." But the paramedics insisted on taking him in. Evelyn drove with me in my old hybrid, radio off, heat blasting against the December ice. She kept texting quietly, her thumbs moving fast, the glow of her screen casting soft gold across her face. A thoughtful girl, observant. "Grandpa," she asked softly, "are you okay? I should be asking you that." She hesitated. I didn't think Dad would freak out like that. I didn't think it mattered. I glanced at her. She stared straight ahead, but her jaw was tight. "Did I mess up?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart," I told her. Sometimes the truth doesn't break things. It only shows you what was cracked long before. The emergency room at Riverbend Memorial had the same atmosphere it always did. Fluorescent lighting too bright for comfort, too dim for hope, and a constant hum of conversations that all seemed to begin or end with worry. If someone ever wanted to stage a play about human fragility, they need only stand in that waiting room for 10 minutes and take notes. Evelyn and I sat in stiff plastic chairs near a vending machine filled with candy bars that looked older than my granddaughter. Around us, a toddler crying because he didn't want stitches, a woman arguing with her husband about whether parking validation applied after midnight, a teenager blasting game music from his phone loud enough to irritate half the room. But my eyes were on Miles. He paced the hallway like a man walking through the wreckage of his own life, because maybe he was. He'd convinced the nurses he needed to stay mobile, but the truth was clear. He was spiraling. His hospital bracelet gleamed as he kept one hand on his chest, as if checking whether his heart had returned to its normal rhythm. I pretended to study the vending machine, though really, I watched him reflected in the glass. Years in regional theater had taught me about acoustics, how sound traveled when it shouldn't and vanished when you needed it. Miles didn't know that. He lifted his phone to his ear. Just give me 2 more months, he whispered harshly. Please, 2 months. I'm working on something big. A pause. No, I can't explain right now. Not here. Another pause. His free hand sliced the air in sharp, panicked gestures. The old man ruined everything. That would be me. I stared at the Snickers bar I had no intention of buying or wanting. He kept talking, voice sharp and trembling. I'll figure it out. I always do. He hung up moments before Jonas walked into view. She looked exhausted, hair tied back in a messy knot, hospital badge still clipped crookedly to her uniform. They think it's a stress reaction, she said, sitting beside me. Not a heart issue, just too much pressure lately. Has he been under a lot of pressure? I asked gently. Her face tightened, confusion mixed with defensiveness. Dad, he said you've always judged him for not growing up with money, that you look down on him. That's been eating at him for years. I blinked, honestly stunned. The accusation hit like a thrown stone. Unexpected, sharp, undeserved. I've never once said anything like that to him. You may not have meant to, she said, eyes glistening. But he feels like you do, and feelings matter. Feelings? Yes, but so did truth. She stood to stretch, hands trembling just slightly, a sign only a parent would notice. Jonas, I said softly, I don't look down on anyone, least of all the man you married. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked toward the nurse's station. Evelyn nudged me gently and whispered, Grandpa, there's something you should know. She handed me her phone under the chair arm like she was passing state secrets. A text thread glowed on the screen, her messages to her father after his collapse. Are you okay? While Grandpa drives me, I'll update you. He didn't do anything wrong, Dad. Below that, her father's replies clipped, frantic. Did he ever tell you more about the trust? What conditions did he put on it? Could you get access early if it was urgent? Evelyn whispered. He's been asking stuff like that for months. Super casually, like he's collecting details. My stomach tightened. How long has this been going on? She bit her lip. Since around early autumn. It got worse after Thanksgiving. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from her, because she didn't want her mother overhearing. Mom said Dad's been tense, like he's carrying something heavy. Grandpa, I think he's scared of something. I looked at her, really looked. 16-year-olds shouldn't know how to read adult panic. But life forces some children to grow emotionally older than their years. It's not your fault, I told her. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't fully believe me. By 11 that night, a doctor finally declared Miles stable enough to go home. They discharged him with instructions about breathing exercises and follow-up stress evaluations. Jonas hugged me in the parking lot. She smelled like antiseptic soap and a fear she was trying hard to hide. Thank you for coming, Dad, she whispered. Always, I whispered back. But as I drove home alone through sleet-slicked streets, the warmth of her hug didn't soften the chill spreading through me. Someone who owed money. Someone who feared exposure. Someone who had called me the old man who ruined everything. He wasn't talking about a holiday mishap. He was talking about something deeper, something dangerous. And whatever it was, it had already begun cracking the foundation of my family. Jonah's kitchen looked like a lifestyle magazine spread gone rogue, high-end appliances gleaming under recessed lighting, marble counters covered in half-empty coffee cups, unopened mail, and medical bills anchored by a ceramic mug that read World's Greatest Mom. The lettering faded from years in the dishwasher. She moved around the space like someone perpetually bracing for bad news, her shoulders tight, her steps quick, her voice clipped. Thanks for coming, Dad, she said, pouring coffee that sloshed over the rim. She wiped the spill 3 times, each swipe more frantic than the last. The paper towel shredded under her fingers. How's Miles? They're keeping him overnight. Stress monitoring. Her voice trembled before she steadied it with a hard swallow. We're fine. Just temporary cash flow issues. I set down my mug before I could throw it. What kind of issues? She hesitated, the kind of hesitation that tells the truth before words ever do. He invested in a business opportunity, she said, choosing each word carefully. And it's taking longer to pay off. What opportunity? I don't know all the details, she snapped faster than she meant to. He handles the finances. I exhaled slowly. Jonas, he told me I looked down on him, that I disrespected where he came from. Her shoulders stiffened. He's been saying that for years, Dad. Years? Jonas, I've never dashed. I defended you. She interrupted, voice cracking. But now, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have. The accusation hung in the air between us with the weight of wet wool. I wanted to list every time I lifted them through hard years, every dinner I paid for when they were struggling, every encouragement I gave him when he doubted himself. But if Miles had spent years whispering poison, my truth would sound like just another performance. I love you, I said instead. That's all that matters. She didn't answer. She just kept wiping that same non-existent spill. I left through the garage, throat tight. Evelyn intercepted me before I reached my car. She glanced over her shoulder toward the kitchen door like she expected spies behind it. 5 minutes, she said, pressing a folded piece of paper into my palm. Don't unfold it here. She spoke like a spy in a movie, but her hands trembled, a kid trying to be brave. We stood among plastic storage bins packed with holiday decorations they never had time to hang. Her breath fogged the cold air. Dad keeps asking about the trust, she whispered. Like weird questions. Casual but not casual questions. What kind? Stuff like when did Grandpa set it up? Does he ever talk about changes? Could you use it early if there was an emergency? She swallowed hard. It started in early autumn. Got worse around Thanksgiving. I put a hand on her shoulder. Sweetheart, you did the right thing telling me. She shook her head. Did I? Grandpa. Mom's exhausted. Dad's in the hospital. Everyone's fighting, and I feel like I lit the match. No, I told her gently. The fire was already burning. You just saw the smoke. I tucked the paper into my coat pocket and drove home through sleet that glittered under streetlights like broken glass. I missed my exit, circled back, the steering wheel slick under trembling fingers. I had barely stepped into my apartment when my neighbor, Loretta, knocked on the door carrying a casserole like a battering ram. She'd been a private investigator for 3 decades before retiring and turning her talent toward neighborhood gossip, weaponized with alarming precision. That's my concerned neighbor face, she said, marching past me without invitation. Not my usual face. What happened? My daughter thinks I'm a judgmental snob, I said flatly. Loretta blinked. Are you? No. Then someone's rewriting your dialogue, she said, crossing her arms. Wanted to find out who. I should have said no. Family business should stay in the family. But the truth was, I was in over my head, and Loretta smelled blood. I exhaled. Miles Baker, married to my daughter Jonas. Lives in East Willoughby. She pulled out her phone, thumb moving like a hummingbird's wing. Spell it. 2 hours later, she called. Sit down, she said. I'm already sitting. Good. Your son-in-law is in debt. A lot of debt. $230,000 that I found in 2 hours. Offshore sports betting. Crypto losses. High-risk forex sites. And that's just the visible part. My breath caught. $230,000. Not owed to a bank. Not owed to the IRS. You want me to keep digging? I closed my eyes against the pounding in my head, then opened them slowly. Yes, I said. Find everything. 15 minutes later, she appeared at my door with a folder thick enough to be used as a weapon. She spread documents across my table, bank statements, screenshots, card histories, highlighted lines like neon wounds. Loretta tapped one page. He's been searching late at night. How to access a trust early, how to change trust conditions, even how to file for emergency financial exceptions. My stomach dropped. Trust wasn't just a word anymore. It was a target, and my granddaughter was the key he wanted to use. I didn't sleep that night. Loretta's folder lay open across my coffee table like a crime scene report, each highlighted line a wound in my daughter's life. Offshore betting slips. Automated crypto purchases made at the absolute peak of the market. One transfer stood out. Nearly $120,000 wired to a platform so obscure I had to look up whether it even existed last year. A man doesn't accidentally lose that much. A man digs that hole with purpose, denial, and addiction. By dawn, I called my attorney, Harold. Harold wasn't just a lawyer. He'd been my friend for nearly 2 decades, ever since we worked together on a community theater board where he'd handled the paperwork, and I'd handle the backstage chaos. Give me your full truth, Harold said. Lawyers didn't ask for summaries. So I told him everything. Miles' collapse, Evelyn's warnings, Jonas' accusations, Loretta's findings, and the fear that my granddaughter's trust had become the center of a storm none of us had seen forming. He didn't interrupt, another lawyer's skill. When I finally stopped talking, Harold let out a slow exhale. You want to modify the trust to protect Evelyn? He said. Yes, that's doable, but delicate. Courts don't like clauses that feel punitive. It's not punitive. It's defensive. It will read as both. He shuffled papers. I imagined him pushing his glasses up his nose the way he did when he was calculating consequences. What else do you need from me, Harold? You need to talk to your granddaughter, carefully, he said. She should know you're taking steps to protect her. But do not discuss specifics until the documents are filed. I understand. And Hosea Dash. He only used my name gently when he sensed danger. You must not confront Miles until we finalize your legal shielding. I didn't promise that. I only promised to try. That evening, I called Evelyn while Jonas was on a late shift at the clinic. Sweetheart, I said, you didn't cause anything. But your father, he's been asking you questions for a reason. Quiet breathing filled the line. I thought so, she whispered. I'm making sure the trust stays protected. No one can pressure you about it. Not now, not ever. A small exhale of relief. Thank you, Grandpa. We hung up. What I didn't know was that Miles had installed monitoring software on her phone. Parental safety, he'd called it. But it was surveillance, plain and simple. And across town, sitting in his car in the dark corner of a parking lot, he listened to our entire conversation. His world, already cracking, split another inch. At 9:45 p.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 hard, urgent knocks. Too late for courtesy. Too early for emergencies. Through the peephole, I saw Miles pale, eyes red, hospital bracelet still on his wrist. He raised his fist to knock again, but it trembled. I opened the door. He brushed past me without waiting for invitation. We need to talk, he said. Now. His voice wasn't angry. It was hollow, stretched thin like fabric pulled too tight. I gestured toward the sofa. Sit. He didn't. He paced my living room, the way actors rehearse monologues they're terrified to perform. I know what you think of me, he said. And you're right. The confession hit like a sudden gust. Not because it was surprising, but because it felt like a man releasing a breath he'd been holding for years. I've been drowning, he said. The betting started small. A friend showed me an app. I thought I was good at it. I was for a while. Then I wasn't. He rubbed his hands through his hair. I kept thinking the next bet would fix the last one. That I'd win it all back. That Jonas would never have to know. You stole from her retirement, I said quietly. He froze. I watched the tremor move across his face like a shadow. How do you know that? I know everything, Miles. He sat abruptly, as if his legs had given out. She works double shifts, I said. She sacrifices everything for your family. And you repaid her by emptying her future. He covered his face with his hands. I was going to replace it before she saw the statements. I just needed more time. Time, the gambler's drug. I waited until he looked up again. You're going to tell her, I said. All of it. In 48 hours. His mouth opened, closed. He looked like he might argue. Then he saw my eyes and realized arguments were dead things here. She'll leave me, he whispered. She might, I said, but she will absolutely leave you if I tell her. He stood slowly, shaky, defeated, still performing a little even in his despair. I never meant to hurt her, he said. Intentions don't patch holes, I replied. Truth does. That's her job now. He left my apartment like a man walking away from a funeral he wasn't sure he deserved to attend. I locked the door, double-locked it, wedged a chair under the knob because the lock felt flimsy now that danger had a face. At dawn, Jonas texted me, coming over this morning. Need to ask what you know. I typed back, I'll put coffee on. But my hands shook, not from fear, from certainty. 48 hours would not pass quietly. By the time Jonas arrived at my apartment, her eyes were swollen, not from tears, but from exhaustion. The kind that accumulates slowly, like snow on a roof no one remembers to reinforce. She didn't sit. She hovered near the counter, coat still on, breath shaky. I talked to Miles, she said. A tremor rippled through her voice. He told me what you did. Alarm flushed through me. What did I do? You bought his debt, she snapped. You used his mother's medical bills to blackmail him. You orchestrated the trust freeze. You've been manipulating everything. Her words hit like a slap. Jonas, I said, keeping my voice steady, none of that is true. He said you threatened him, that you wanted to leave him, that you're punishing him for where he comes from Dash. His mother is alive and healthy in Arizona. I interrupted, sharing photos at a casino, last I checked. For a moment, just a moment, I saw doubt flicker across her face. But the seeds Miles had been planting for years were deep, and fear waters lies better than truth ever can. She shook her head. I don't know what to believe anymore. Believe your own eyes, I said gently. Look around. You're drowning under medical bills, interest fees, and unexplained charges. Does that look like someone who has things under control? She flinched because she knew the answer, but she wasn't ready to hear it. I need space, she whispered. I need to think. Before I could respond, she walked out, closing my door softly, which somehow hurt worse than if she had slammed it. I sat at my kitchen table afterward, staring at my hands. The hands that had built sets for plays, fixed toys, held newborns. These hands had supported nearly everyone I loved. And now, one lie from a desperate man had turned them into weapons in my daughter's eyes. Outside, the sky shifted from gray to nearly black, an early winter nightfall that made the city lights blur through the cold air. I didn't move until my phone buzzed. Evelyn. Grandpa. Mom just came home crying. Dad's acting weird. There's more going on. Call me. I dialed immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Grandpa, she whispered, voice trembling. I found something. What did you find, sweetheart? He left his laptop open. A shaky inhale. There were messages between Dad and someone listed as EP Financial Solutions. The name prickled at my memory. Loretta had mentioned something similar. A collection agency with a reputation darker than asphalt in the rain. What did the messages say? I'm sending you a screenshot. A pause. Grandpa, it's bad. The screenshot came through. My stomach tightened as I read. Baker, final grace period. $230,000 due by the 22nd of February. If payment is not made, your wife receives every record of your bets, losses, and lies. We are done negotiating. Below it, your son was your last leverage. Do not disappoint us again. I felt the air leave my lungs. This wasn't just debt. This was coercion, threat, control. The kind of people who didn't send friendly reminders. The kind of people who believed consequences were motivational tools. When did you find this? I asked. Tonight. He doesn't know I saw it. Don't tell him, Evelyn. Delete our messages. And stay where you are. Grandpa, her voice cracked. I'm scared. I know, I said softly. But you did the right thing. I'm going to handle this. After we hung up, I stared at the screenshot until the text blurred. The truth was now unmistakable. Miles had been gambling not only with money, but with my daughter's safety, my granddaughter's innocence, and the remnants of his own morality. And someone far more dangerous than a bank or credit union, owned his leash. The door to my building rattled as wind pushed against it, the old hinges squeaking like a warning. I leaned back in my chair. No, this wasn't about rescuing Miles. This was about rescuing my family from the fallout he had created. There was no moral ambiguity left. He wasn't just a liar. He wasn't just drowning in debt. He wasn't just terrified. He had become a liability, a danger, a man cornered in a way that made desperate choices feel like reasonable ones. And desperate men destroy more than just their own lives. I texted Loretta. I need the full contact information for EP Financial Solutions. We need a meeting. 3 dots appeared. Then, you're planning something risky. I typed back. I'm planning something necessary. Her response came instantly. I'll make the calls. I closed my phone. The storm had moved from sleet to heavy rain, pounding the windows like impatient fists. My family didn't know it yet, but the next decisions I made would decide whether we survived the next month intact. 2 hours after I texted Loretta, she appeared at my door again, hair pulled into a tight bun, reading glasses perched low on her nose, and a manila folder in her hand thick enough to patch drywall. I found your people, she said, stepping inside before I had a chance to invite her. And Hosea, you're not going to like them. I already don't. She dropped the folder onto my table with a heavy slap. Inside were printed screenshots, address histories, business records filed under names that sounded deliberately bland. All classic hallmarks of organizations operating in the shadows, but still wanting to look legitimate enough to intimidate. EP Financial Solutions, she said, tapping one page, isn't a firm. It's a collection front for a private bookmaker ring. They run everything from offshore sports platforms to debt bundling markets. And they don't send friendly reminders. I gathered as much. They're not violent unless provoked, she said, but they use leverage, shame, exposure, fear. They pick people who will do anything to avoid their secrets becoming public. My stomach nodded. Miles fits their model perfectly. Loretta exhaled. And now they're circling. They want their money by late February. 230,000 pounds of pressure sat on my chest. What happens if they don't get paid? She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. They won't hurt your family, she said softly, but they will destroy his reputation, his career, his marriage, everything he hides behind. And Evelyn, I said, voice flat, was his leverage. Loretta nodded grimly. I sat back, rubbing my temples. I had lived nearly 7 decades, seen careers blow up, marriages crumble, families fracture. But this felt different. This felt engineered. Is there a way to buy the debt? I asked. She looked up sharply. That's dangerous. It's also necessary. She sighed, the sound of a woman preparing herself to abet something morally questionable for the sake of something morally essential. I can arrange a meeting. Arrange it. 2 days later, I found myself climbing a dim stairwell above a pawn shop on the industrial edge of the city, a place where people didn't go unless they were desperate or dangerous. The office was Spartan, a metal desk, 2 mismatched chairs, a flickering fluorescent bulb, and a framed photograph of a mountain range leaning crookedly against the wall, as if the person hanging it had given up halfway through. The man behind the desk was mid-40s, with a handshake like cold iron and eyes the exact opposite of compassionate. You're the father-in-law, he said. Sit. I sat. He opened a folder, Miles' betting history. Line after line of losses. Attempts to recoup. Double downs. Fantasy analytics spreadsheets that read like the prayer book of a sinking man. I want to buy his debt, I said. Not many volunteer. I'm not many. He smirked. 230,000. But if you buy it, you own the consequences. That's fine. Not to us, he said. We don't extend timelines when debt transfers. You take the risk. He owes you, not us. I understand. And why? He said, leaning forward. Would a man like you want to own a mess like this? Because my daughter and granddaughter are in the blast radius, I said. And I'm making sure the explosion hits no one but him. The man gave a short, humorless chuckle. I respect that. He slid a printed agreement across the desk. A legal-looking document, though I doubted any court in the country would recognize it. We can transfer the debt for $170,000, he said. A loss for us, but a clean cut. I had expected the number to be higher, not cheaper, which meant they were just as eager to sever ties with Miles as we were. I removed the cashier's check from an inner coat pocket, $170,000, liquidated from investments I had never intended to touch until retirement. He lifted it toward the overhead light, examined it for watermarks, then nodded to the notary seated in the corner. The man stamped the agreement with a heavy metal seal. And just like that, with a few signatures, I became my son-in-law's sole creditor. You'll send him something? I asked. The man nodded, sliding the stamped agreements into a folder. He'll receive notification today. New owner of debt. New terms. No negotiation. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. That evening, while the rain hammered the roof of my apartment like a marching army, Jonas discovered the tracking software on Evelyn's phone. Her cell phone had died at work, so she'd borrowed Evelyn's to check her schedule. One swipe. Another. Then there it was, an app tucked inside a folder labeled Tools. Activity logs. Location history. Message mirroring. 3 months of it. Jonas' gasp was loud enough that Evelyn rushed into the room. Mom, But Jonas only stared at the screen, her marriage unraveling in one digital moment. When she confronted Miles, she didn't scream. She didn't throw anything. She didn't sob. She asked the quiet, devastating question, "What?" Miles gave no real answer. He never did. Later that night, Jonas called me from her car, voice quivering but controlled. "Dad, did you know he was spying on our daughter?" "Yes. You should have told me. You should have been safe," I said gently. "And you weren't. But you will be." She exhaled shakily. "I don't know what to do." "You don't have to know tonight," I said. "Just breathe." After we hung up, I sat alone in my dark apartment, the signed debt transfer still warm in its envelope. My daughter's life had become a house built on lies. Miles didn't know it yet, but the foundation had already cracked, and soon it would collapse. I woke that night to a sound I could not immediately identify, the faint scrape of metal against metal. It reminded me of backstage rigging from my theater days, when apprentices would fumble with old locks, never realizing how loud they were to everyone else. But this sound wasn't coming from a stage. It was coming from my front door. I stayed still, listening. Another scrape, a quiet curse, the cheap lock giving way under the hands of someone who understood the theory of breaking in, but not the finesse. A moment later, the door swung inward. Miles stepped into my living room. He wore a dark hoodie, shoes still damp from the rain, and an expression caught between fury and panic. In his right hand, he held a sleek aluminum baseball bat, the expensive kind sold to suburban fathers who wanted to believe the right equipment could make their kids champions. He looked ridiculous with it, and dangerous. I stepped into the hallway and switched on a lamp. "You broke my lock," I said, voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my veins. "That's going to cost money." He jerked at the sound of my voice. The bat rose slightly before dipping again, trembling in his grasp. "Where are they?" he breathed. "Who?" "The debt documents." He swallowed hard. "The ones you got from EP Financial. I know you met with them. They're in a safe deposit box," I said. "Did you think I'd keep them here?" He ran a shaking hand over his jaw. "You bought my debt. You bought it. Why? Why would you do this to me?" "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "You did this to yourself. You are destroying my life." "No," I replied, keeping my voice measured. "I am preventing you from destroying my daughter and granddaughter." He took 2 steps toward me. The bat wavered. "Give me the documents," he said. "Give them to me, and this ends." "It doesn't end that way," I said softly. "And you know it." His face contorted, not with rage, but with desperation. Pure, suffocating desperation. "I'll go to the police," he hissed. "I'll tell them you stole from me, that you coerced me, that you dash." "Go ahead," I cut in. "Then you can explain why you're standing in my living room at 2 in the morning with a baseball bat." He froze. "And while you're at it," I continued, "you can explain the gambling, the debts, the offshore accounts, the tracking software you installed on Evelyn's phone, the messages threatening your family if you don't pay." The bat dropped an inch as reality slapped him hard. He was not the man in control here. He was the man who had finally run out of lies that made him feel bigger than his failures. Slowly, he lowered the bat until it clattered against the hardwood. The metallic echo filled the room like a final verdict. His knees buckled. He slid down the wall, sitting on the floor with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I couldn't stop," he whispered. "Every time I lost, I thought one more win, just one more, and I could put it all back." I didn't want Jonas to know what I'd become. "What you became," I said gently, "is a man who destroys himself before anyone can reach him." A ragged sob escaped him. "I love her," he said. "I love my family." "Then prove it." He looked up, eyes red, face streaked with sweat and humiliation. "You have 48 hours," I said. "Tell Jonas everything. The debts, the tracking, the money you stole from her retirement, all of it. Or I will. With proof." He closed his eyes as though bracing for impact. "She'll leave me." "Maybe," I said. "But if I tell her, there will be no maybe." He wiped his face with shaking hands, picked up the bat, and moved toward the door like a man walking away from a battlefield he had already lost. When the door shut behind him, I wedged a wooden chair under the broken lock. The oldest, most primitive security measure, but it made me feel marginally less exposed. Dawn crept across my apartment, pale gray light sliding over the theatrical masks on the wall. Comedy and tragedy, the twin faces of human frailty. At noon, Jonas called. Her voice was sharper than a blade. "How could you?" she demanded. "How could you buy his debts?" He told me everything, the trust, the pressure, the threats. He said, "You're using this to tear us apart." "Jonas," I pleaded, "that's not what happened." "I don't want to hear your excuses," she said. "I never thought I'd say this, but I was wrong about you. I trusted you, and you betrayed us." She hung up before I could respond. For a long time, I stood there holding the silent phone, the weight of her words pressing on me like stones. She believed him, at least for now. Fear had always been his greatest weapon. But truth is patient, and truth was coming. After Jonah's call, I sat on my sofa for a long time, staring at the wall. Not thinking, just sitting. There was nothing I could do to change her mind right then. People in crisis don't choose truth. They choose whatever lie promises the least pain. But eventually, pain catches up. And when it did, she would need something concrete, something impossible to deny. My phone buzzed. "Evelyn, Grandpa, we have a problem. A big one." I called her immediately. She answered in a whisper. "Dad's back home. He hasn't said anything to Mom yet. He looks frantic, like he's planning something." "What do you mean?" "He keeps walking around the house, checking corners, locking doors, opening drawers, closing them again, talking to himself." My stomach tightened. Desperation looks different on everyone, but on men like Miles, it becomes volatility. "Where's your mother?" "At work," she whispered. "Overtime shift." "Good," I said. "Keep your distance from him tonight." "No," Evelyn said. Her voice changed, steadier, older than 16. "I have an idea." I closed my eyes. "Sweetheart, now is not the time for dash." "It is exactly the time," she said firm. "We need proof. Real proof. Something Mom can't talk herself out of." Her determination both impressed and terrified me. "What kind of proof?" I asked carefully. "A confession," she said. "From him. On video." A chill moved through me. "Evelyn Dash. Please, Grandpa." Her voice cracked just slightly. "He used me. He spied on me. He was trying to use your money to get himself out of trouble. He keeps hurting everyone and then saying it's someone else's fault." I'm done pretending. Silence stretched between us. It was not a child speaking to me. It was someone who had aged years and weeks. "Finally," she said, "I already ordered the camera." "What?" "A tiny one. Looks like a decorative stone. It records in high definition. It arrived today." Of course it had. Prime shipping. The modern armory of teenagers. "Sweetheart Dash. It's my turn to protect Mom," she said. "But I can't do it without you. I need you to tell me exactly what to ask him." I exhaled very slowly. There are moments when a grandfather becomes something more than a grandfather. A shield, a strategist, a witness. "Okay," I said quietly. "Tell me your plan." The following afternoon, in a small coffee shop on Rosewood Avenue, Evelyn showed me the device, a smooth, stone-sized object that looked like it belonged in a Zen garden. "Battery lasts 3 hours," she said. "Motion activated. Records to an encrypted drive." When did she learn these things? Children today were raised in a world where secrecy had become almost intuitive. "We'll put in his office," she said. "Behind the photo frame on the bookshelf. He never dusts there." "That I believe," I murmured. She continued, "I'll tell him you offered me a huge sum, $120,000, as a pre-birthday gift. Cash. No strings. He won't be able to resist." "You're sure?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I know him." There was no bravado in her voice, only resolve. I slid my hand over hers gently. "I'm sorry you've had to grow up this fast." She forced a small smile. "Maybe, but I learned from the best." There are sentences that hit a man's heart like a hammer. That was one. That evening, she placed the tiny camera behind a framed picture of the three of them at the beach. The lens peeked out barely enough to capture the whole room. At exactly 6:32 p.m., the recording began. I watched it later, heart lodged somewhere between my ribs. Evelyn knocked on her father's office door. "Dad, can I talk to you?" Miles turned from his laptop, which, ironically, displayed a sports analysis page. He masked his tension poorly. Sure, sweetheart. What's up? She stepped inside, fidgeting with the end of her sleeve exactly as we had practiced. A subtle performance, enough to look authentic, not enough to look rehearsed. So, she began, Grandpa called today. Miles' attention sharpened instantly. He said, he wants to give me something for my birthday early. Like a big gift. A financial one. Miles stood up. A financial gift? How big? Evelyn looked down. He said, about $120,000. Cash. For college or whatever I want. Miles blinked. Then again, the way a starving man blinks when someone sets a feast in front of him. In cash, he asked. Yeah, she mumbled. And he said I could use it however I want. I thought you guys should know, so we could plan bills or something. That was the hook. And he bit. He sat on the edge of his desk, leaning in. Evelyn, sweetheart, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. He exhaled shakily, a confession pressing against his teeth. I've been dealing with financial strain, he said. Serious strain. If you loan me that money, just temporarily, I could fix everything. Your mom wouldn't need to know. Evelyn's voice stayed small. Are you in trouble? He swallowed. Yes, but I can make it right. He told her everything, not out of honesty, but out of desperation. The gambling, the debts, the offshore accounts, the threats, the lies, the fear of exposure. 8 minutes and 28 seconds of confession. When the footage ended, I closed my laptop harder than I intended. Evelyn had risked more than she understood, and yet exactly what she needed to. Now we had proof. Enough proof to lift the veil from Jonah's eyes. Enough proof to end the lies. Enough proof to change everything. The morning after receiving the video, I moved through my apartment with the slow deliberateness of a man preparing for war, not a war fought with weapons, but with truth sharpened into something surgical. Truth, when delivered at the right moment, can remove, rot the way a scalpel saves an infected limb. I forwarded a copy of the footage to Harold, along with the financial records Loretta had gathered. His reply came within minutes. This is enough. More than enough. We arranged to meet later that afternoon at the Crescent Haven Hotel, an upscale place downtown known for its neutral conference rooms and coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Harold also invited someone else, Dr. Liana Mercer, an addiction specialist well-versed in compulsive gambling behavior. A calm, steady woman with a voice like a warm blanket and eyes that could read your soul in 10 seconds flat. People spiral, she told me on the phone before the meeting. But spirals have patterns. Understanding them doesn't excuse the behavior. It gives you leverage to require change. Leverage, a word I had grown intimately familiar with these last days. At 1:45 p.m., I arrived at the hotel's conference suite. The room was minimalist. A long polished wood table, subtle lighting, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Calm, controlled, a stage for truth. Harold sat at the far end with his laptop open, stacks of documents arranged with lawyerly precision. Dr. Mercer prepared a set of pamphlets and worksheets meant for compulsive gambling interventions. Nothing theatrical, nothing manipulative, simply guidance for the brutal kind of honesty that addiction demands. I set the printed evidence on the table. Bank statements, retirement withdrawals, screenshots of threats from EP Financial, and the small camera stone. The silent witness that had heard more truth in 8 minutes than most therapists hear in months. We're ready, Harold said. Almost, I replied, because the most important person had not yet arrived. At 1:53 p.m., the door cracked open. Jonah stepped inside. Her expression was a tangle, suspicion, exhaustion, fear, and a flicker of hope she no longer trusted. She scanned the room, taking in the documents, the professionals, the gravity. Dad, she murmured. What is this? An ambush? No, I said softly. This is information. And love. The painful kind. She did not sit right away. She hovered by the doorway, gripping her bag strap like a lifeline. I talked to Miles again this morning, she said. He told me you're trying to sabotage our marriage, that you've been plotting against him. Dr. Mercer stepped forward. Mrs. Baker, we're not here to blame you or him. We're here to show you facts, things you've been shielded from. Jonas swallowed hard. He said you all misunderstood him, that he's trying to fix things. Harold nodded gently. He may believe that, but intention and reality often diverge. I gestured to the chair beside me. Sit, sweetheart. Slowly, cautiously she did. Her eyes were fragile and fiery at the same time. A woman who had worn strength too long and was beginning to crack under its weight. Dad, she whispered, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. I opened Harold's laptop, cueing the recording without pressing play. It's worse than what it looks like, I said quietly. But it's also the truth. And you deserve the truth, Jonas. You always have. Her breath caught, her throat tightening. What am I about to see? Your husband, Harold said, speaking plainly about everything he's been hiding, because he believed he was talking privately to your daughter. Jonas' face drained of color. He involved Evelyn? No, I said. He targeted her. Tears surfaced in her eyes, but she blinked them back, determined not to fall apart until she had the full picture. Is he coming? She asked. Yes, Harold said. He'll be here in a few minutes. She leaned forward, bracing her palms against her knees. A posture of someone who wanted to run and stay at the same time. What happens when he gets here? We show him the truth, Dr. Mercer said gently, and give him a path forward. Structured treatment. Full transparency. A way to attempt rebuilding what he's broken. And if he refuses? Jonas whispered. I reached over, taking her hand. If he refuses, I said, you'll have what you need to protect yourself. And Evelyn, her jaw tightened. And you'll still be here? Even after I said those awful things to you. Of course, I said. You're my daughter. Love doesn't vanish when truth arrives. It grows teeth and fights. Her lips trembled. This time, she didn't blink the tears away. She took a deep breath as the hallway outside grew louder. Footsteps, muffled voices. Harold glanced at his watch. 2 o'clock, he murmured. He's on time. Dr. Mercer closed her folder. Jonas squeezed my hand, and the door handle began to turn. The door opened slowly, the way people open doors when they know something is waiting on the other side. Something sharp, something heavy, something that breathes. Miles stepped inside wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than several months of Jonas' clinic wages. His hair was freshly combed, shoes polished. He held a leather portfolio under one arm, like he was arriving to pitch a business idea rather than face the ruins of his own life. He froze when he saw me. Then Harold. Then Dr. Mercer. Then Jonas. His smile, a salesman's reflex, flickered, collapsed, and died. What is all this? He asked. Jonas' voice was calm, in that brittle way glass is calm right before it breaks. Sit down, Miles. He stayed standing for a moment, scanning the room for exits. But the truth has a gravity of its own. Eventually, it pulls you exactly where you need to be. He sat. Harold folded his hands. Mr. Baker, we're here today because there are matters that require immediate clarity and accountability. No accusations without proof. No assumptions without verification. Only facts. Miles swallowed. This feels like an ambush. No, Dr. Mercer said softly. This feels like people trying to help you before everything collapses. He looked at Jonas, then really looked, and the faint tremor in his hands betrayed him. I don't understand, he said. You will, I answered. I turned Harold's laptop toward him. He stared at it for a second, then longer, as though he sensed, deep in his bones, the danger of that screen. Mr. Baker, Harold said, this recording was taken yesterday at your home. In your office, with your daughter present. Miles' face went white. Jonas' breath hitched, the tiniest sound, but sliced the air. Harold pressed play. Evelyn's recorded voice filled the room, unervingly calm. So Grandpa said he wants to give me $120,000 early. Miles jolted as if struck. His eyes darted between us, searching for an escape that wasn't there. Pause it, he said, voice cracking. Please. Jonas, I can explain, Dash. No, Jonas said. Her voice shook. Keep playing. Harold resumed. Miles on the screen leaned closer to his daughter. The real Miles shrank into his chair, as if trying to crawl into himself. I've been dealing with serious financial strain, the video Miles confessed. If you loan me that money, just temporarily, I could fix everything. Jonas covered her mouth. A quiet cry escaped her, soft, wounded, and raw. Then came the part that broke what little remained intact. You don't have to tell your mother. Just help your father. It's for the family. When the video ended, silence poured into the room, dense and suffocating, the kind that makes even breathing feel loud. Jonas wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. You were using our daughter, she whispered, to get money, to hide your lies, to protect yourself. Miles shook his head violently. No, Jonas, I swear, that wasn't Dash. Don't, she said, voice cracking. Don't you dare lie again. Not now. He broke then, shoulders collapsing, face contorted. I was desperate, he sobbed. I didn't want to lose everything. I didn't know what to do. So you preyed on Evelyn? Jonas shouted, standing so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. On our child? She trusted you. I wasn't thinking Dash. That's the problem, she snapped. You thought only of yourself. Dr. Mercer slid a set of documents toward him, her voice gentle but firm. Miles, you've been living with untreated gambling disorder for years. You've built an internal world of denial, so thick you can't see the real consequences anymore. This isn't who I am, he whispered. It's exactly who you've become, I said quietly. He looked at me, eyes swollen, red, pleading, but I felt nothing except a cold, exhausted clarity. Harold slid the main agreement forward. This, he said, is a structured accountability plan. Non-negotiable terms if you wish to remain part of this family. Miles blinked through tears. What terms? Full repayment, Harold said. Every penny stolen from Jonas' retirement. Within 6 years. 6 dash? I can't dash. You will, Harold said firmly. Mandatory therapy and a residential recovery program, Dr. Mercer added. Not optional. Documented attendance. No access to Evelyn's trust, I said. Not now. Not ever. And complete financial transparency, Harold finished. Every account. Every password. Monthly oversight. Miles stared at the document, breath ragged. And if I refuse, he whispered. Jonas exhaled, a whisper of a woman who had been holding her marriage together with fraying thread. If you refuse, she said softly, I file for divorce tomorrow morning. Miles collapsed forward, head in his hands, sobbing into his palms. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he reached for the pen. The signature he scrawled shook like a barely held together man. When the meeting ended, the room felt like a battlefield after dawn, quiet, smoky in its silence, littered with the invisible debris of things that can never return to what they were. Jonas didn't speak to Miles as she left. She didn't touch him, didn't look at him, didn't offer even a flicker of reassurance. She only paused long enough to embrace me, tightly, desperately, before whispering, "Thank you for helping me see." The gratitude hurt more than the anger had, because it came from a breaking place. Evelyn waited outside the conference suite, leaning against the wall with her earbuds in, pretending to scroll her phone even though her eyes were too unfocused to be reading anything. When she saw Jonas emerge, she dropped everything and wrapped her arms around her mother. Jonas broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, folded in grief, the kind only a daughter could witness. I stepped back, giving them space they didn't have to ask for. Inside the room, Miles remained seated, elbows on the table, hands locked over the top of his head as if trying to hold his skull together. Harold and Dr. Mercer packed their bags silently, sharing one last look with me, the kind of look that said this is only the beginning. When the door finally clicked shut behind them, Miles and I were alone. He didn't lift his head at first. "You win," he muttered eventually, voice hoarse. Satisfied now? I leaned on the back of the nearest chair. This wasn't about winning. He let out a bitter laugh. Everything with you is about control. No, I said. Everything with me is about protecting my daughter and granddaughter. And you made that necessary. He finally looked up, eyes red, jaw tight. You think you're a hero in this, he said. But you enjoyed it. The power, the leverage. Admit it. I didn't rise to the accusation. Instead, I studied him, a man stripped of performance, stripped of lies, stripped of every illusion he'd wrapped himself in. Only desperation remained. And behind that, shame. You've built your life on running from the truth, I said softly. And you hate me because I refuse to run with you. He swallowed hard, throat working. I can't fix what I did, he whispered. Even if I wanted to, then start by not breaking anything else. He stared at the table, defeated, and for the first time, I believed he meant it. 2 days later, an unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. No note. Just a single photograph tucked inside. A photograph of Miles, and a woman who was decidedly not Jonas. They stood in a Las Vegas casino, chandelier lights glittering overhead, cards scattered across the table behind them. His arm wrapped around her waist in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. The timestamp in the corner placed it at midsummer of the year Evelyn turned 10. During that time, he'd told Jonas he was at a regional sales retreat. My stomach dropped, not because the infidelity shocked me, but because it revealed how deep the river of deception ran beneath the surface of his life. Miles didn't just lie to escape consequences. He lied to construct an identity that never truly existed. I stared at the image for a long time beneath the soft glow of my kitchen lamp. I could show Jonas. I could end the marriage decisively. I could watch him crumble under the weight of one more truth he could not spin. But I didn't. Not yet. Not because he deserved mercy. He didn't. Not because I feared the fallout. I didn't. But because Jonas was standing at the fragile start of her own healing. If she learned this now, it would shatter her into pieces too small to gather. So I placed the photograph in a small lockbox in my study. Not destroyed, not forgotten. There are truths that must be held like matches, carefully, deliberately, only lit when necessary. The following week, on a gray Thursday morning, I met Miles for coffee at a small neighborhood cafe. He'd been living in the guest room, attending Gamblers Anonymous, beginning therapy, attempting awkwardly, desperately to follow the accountability plan. He looked thinner, paler, older. "Why did you meet me here?" he asked, cupping his mug with both hands, as if warming himself on something he didn't quite deserve. "Because there's something you need to hear," I said. He tensed. I slid the photograph across the table. He didn't touch it, just stared, dread calcifying across his features. "Does Jonas know?" he whispered. "No." He finally lifted the picture, stared at it for a long, terrible moment, then looked at me. Why didn't you show her?" "You think this is mercy," I said. "But it isn't." "Then what is it?" "Control," I said plainly. "You lost the right to hide from consequences. But Jonas deserves the chance to decide the shape of her future without this being shoved in her face during the worst week of her life." He lowered his eyes. "And if I slip again," he asked quietly. "Then she sees this," I said, "and much more." His breath caught. "You're putting me on a leash," he murmured. "Yes," I replied, "because you've proven you can't walk without one." He didn't argue. He couldn't. When we left the cafe, he walked ahead with slumped shoulders, not yet a redeemed man, but perhaps a humbled one. And humility, I had learned, was the first ingredient in rebuilding anything broken. The weeks that followed didn't settle into peace so much as into a tense, aching quiet. Recovery wasn't tidy. It came in uneven waves, apologies, silence, paperwork, meetings, and long nights where Jonas stared at the ceiling wondering how much of her marriage had been reality and how much had been wishful thinking. Miles entered treatment, not gracefully, but earnestly. He attended Gamblers Anonymous, met with Dr. Mercer, surrendered his accounts to Harold, and followed the accountability terms because he understood finally that there was no path forward without them. Jonas remained cautious. She didn't forgive him, but she watched him. Some days hope flickered. Other days it dimmed. Evelyn grew more watchful too, though she carried herself with a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. Pain ages young people fast, but resilience grows just as quickly. As for me, I moved carefully through those weeks, knowing I had done what was necessary, but also knowing necessary choices often leave bruises. My 69th birthday arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Jonas insisted on cooking dinner at my apartment. She arrived with groceries, sleeves pushed up, determined to make something feel normal again. Evelyn followed her, carrying a bottle of wine she knew I liked. And Miles came too slowly, cautiously, as though stepping into a chapel where he feared being struck down for past sins. Dinner was quiet but civil. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel hostile, just fragile. Afterward, I stood at the window, watching the rain blur the city lights. Jonas came to stand beside me. "Dad," she said softly, "thank you for guiding me through all this." "You guided yourself," I told her. "I just reminded you where the light switch was." She leaned into me. "Do you think we'll be okay?" "You'll be something," I said honestly. "Maybe not what you were, but something true." She nodded, tears slipping quietly down her face. Later, Evelyn joined me. "Grandpa," she whispered, "is this the ending?" "No," I said, "just a steadier chapter." "And Miles?" she asked. "He's trying," I said. "Trying doesn't erase the past, but it can shape the future." She took my hand. "I'm glad we still have one." Behind us, Jonas cleared dishes. Miles dried them, slower than necessary, as if careful not to break what little trust remained. I watched them, three people, standing on the cracked floor of a life they were choosing, piece by piece, to rebuild. Not perfect, not whole, but standing. And sometimes that is the closest thing to victory life allows.